All right, here we are with Will from EnviroBloq. Are you the IoTexan or is that your partner
I
Chuck?
am the 𝐼oTexan. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
right on, dude. So we want to do these deep in states and get kind of updates on projects. In some cases, it's projects not a lot of people have heard about. I got to meet you and Chuck a while ago in Denver, and got kind of an update. But give me like broad strokes on what you guys are doing, and then we'll jump into what the latest is.
Yep. So we're all about proof of efficiency. That's kind of our tagline. And our entry into the smart home industry is in the attic space, starting out, and just focus on improving different efficiencies of installation systems, ventilation systems, ultimately for the data to be sold to manufacturers, even as a point of marketing down to the consumer.
Yep.
But so broad stroke, the homeowner has efficiency data of their home, monitoring that. And then on large scale, it's a marketing opportunity down to the homeowner in the long term. But right now, we're just over 120 devices in 16 different countries. So we had very early interaction and integration because a lot of people had bought these Pebble devices from IoTeX.
Yep.
There's a lot of projects we're talking about using them, and so we had a very early attraction to kind of get those on board and kind of use them as a proof of concept. So right now we're looking at our next piece of hardware, which is the seed development kit that they've partnered up with IoTeX on. So
Okay.
the Pebble is very much a proof of concept device that IoTeX came out with originally in design. So we're very excited to get our hands on the seed dev kit,
Okay.
and really be able to expand our use case and our network with that. It's definitely more economical. It comes in about half the cost of the Pebble.
Yeah.
So it'll be a little bit easier for the homeowner to kind of make that purchase. A lot easier for us if we're going to target partnership opportunities with local utility providers or things like that we're thinking about, home builders, things like that. So
Okay.
we're very much focused on next piece of hardware so we can build our networks. We really want to hit that like 10,000 homes
That's
mark.
that's a big
So
jump.
that,
So let's level set a bit. What you're talking about when you're talking about the Pebble is this little device here. I don't know if my camera will focus on that. Yeah.
yeah.
And that is an IoTeX based device. You guys are an IoTeX based project, and a lot of the questions that Max and I get about IoTeX are like, what do those guys do? And you guys are a great example of one of the things they do. So someone buys the Pebble or this next piece of hardware, they put it up in their attic. It monitors the temperature, humidity, anything else, pressure, something like
Yeah.
that.
So it's a data rich mining device,
Okay.
so we're only using the temperature, humidity, air pressure, location mainly.
Okay.
It does have light on there, which we're starting to utilize as well.
Okay.
But there's an accelerometer on there. You can tell orientation on it, some different things for proof of concept. So, but IoTeX is not a hardware manufacturer. They
Right.
designed it. So they designed the blockchain and they designed the tamper-proof hardware. So that was kind of their concept, and
And
that's
then they're
what they
like, hey,
really
figure
said.
it out.
Yep. So, and that was their whole point of the Halo grant. So that's how we got kicked off with
Yep.
IoTeX. Was
Yep.
we applied for the Halo grant, which got accepted. So that was their deal. Y'all go run with it,
Yep.
find a use case and bring it to market, and that's kind of what we've been focused on, is proving that out the whole time. So
And the use case that you guys found is that a homeowner puts it in their attic, and then you guys come in and you say, "Hey, we'll connect you with some HVAC contractors and make sure that your attic is performing the way it's supposed to. And if it isn't, we'll put on X, Y, and Z or make these changes, insulation, reflectivity, et cetera, et cetera." Is that kind of close enough?
exactly,
Okay.
exactly, yeah. Long term, through analytics, we'd be able to identify points of energy waste or
Yep.
inefficiency.
Yep.
And as an example, like solar vents on houses, something like that. Hey, check out our new line of solar vents. We noticed that your attic's hotter than your neighbors, or that type of thing.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's a point of identifying through analytics, in comparison to the rest of the network, of where people are basically wasting power and energy. So, which
Got it.
becomes a marketing opportunity from industry back down to the consumer.
Okay. And then you guys are managing that kind of back end where you're connecting in the contractors to say like, "Hey, we've got an inquiry from this customer. You should go talk to them."
Right. Yeah. Not yet. But that's where we're headed for sure.
Okay.
For
All
sure.
right. Super cool. And then what's your background? How'd you get into this? I think you told me this once before.
Yeah. So, studied mechanical engineering. I grew up here around Austin. So that's happy to be back after
Okay.
my tour through the oil and gas industry after I got out of school.
Yep.
So I did oil and gas for 5 years as a project engineer and lived all over the U.S. And did that. And then I needed a way to get back to Texas. So, roofing was my way back.
Hmm.
And that kind of got me into being around the house, but also into a lot of attic spaces. And then being a conscious homeowner, I'm studying, you know, everything. Where are we wasting power? Where are we wasting money?
Yep.
Just being a first time homeowner. And then, as this Halo grant came across, I was like, how can we utilize this Pebble device? And then
Hmm.
it clicked one time. I was like, nobody's studying attic spaces. It's largely thought of as a wasted storage space at most.
Yep.
But to anybody that understands the HVAC industry or ventilation or that world, the attic space is very important. Down in the South where we are, removing heat is the name of the game.
Yep.
Up in Canada, where we have a lot of devices as well, it's all about removing moisture. So,
Huh.
if not in check, you're either wasting energy or creating a health hazard with mold. So
Oh, interesting. Okay.
it becomes a much more important thing than just wasting money at that point too. So, and again, as an attractive point to the homeowner to be able to monitor their home and efficiency, it's not only just monitoring their wasted money and resources, but also making sure they're not creating a health hazard in their home as well. So that's kind of what got us in there. And we didn't. The smart home industry is very large and broad. We didn't want to jump in and rub elbows with the Google Nest right away or something like that, but we definitely saw an opportunity kind of making the attic our niche early on, and
Yep.
which will then expand to the rest of the smart home, if you will.
Interesting. And then does someone have to put up a couple of these in the attic, or is it just one? I'm thinking
So
of my
right
attic in my
now,
little house. I got a bunch of vents all over the place. I feel like there's probably different parts of my attic that are warmer, colder, more or less ventilation.
for sure, yeah, and with the cost constraint of the Pebble, that kind
Sure.
of limits someone from throwing 10 in different places of the attic. And that's
Yeah,
something we're
yeah.
studying on our end of
What do they
where's
what do they
this?
run?
They're
What the
$215 for the
215. Okay.
device.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then they run on the IoT SIM card, which is kind of the difficult part about it.
Okay.
Because, depending on where you're at, if the IoT infrastructure is even in place,
Yep.
if it is, you're looking at an annual or monthly data plan, so
Yep.
that's kind of one of the hurdles that we've been looking at with the Pebble is kind of getting past that.
Yep.
With our next hardware, to want a SIM card and doing that kind of
Sure.
case and base.
Yeah, yeah.
But we had a very interesting call with the one team last week,
Okay.
and that was very encouraging as far as connectivity outside of the densely populated area, which I know you're familiar with healing and all of that. So,
Yeah.
um, so what we haven't singled out or xed out the SIM card in the next device, but we're very much figuring out the most economically feasible piece of hardware that we can expand the most and get the most data out of.
Yep. And that's interesting. This is this is a DePIN project where you're saying like, hey, let's take the real world, let's reward you, and with I'm assuming it's tokens you and the IoTeX grant system, they give you guys tokens that you can then use however you want, and part of that's going to reward people who put these in, or how does it work?
So it was a financial grant. We're about to hit milestone two, which is a
Okay.
$10,000 milestone for us, which is
Okay.
very big for us in our
It's a big deal. Yeah.
bootstrapping phase.
Yeah.
But the way that we're kind of funding ourselves right now is we're an IoTeX delegate. And so
Okay.
we're earning or a validator in the rest of the blockchain world.
Yeah.
So we're earning rewards being a validator from that. And then
Yep.
we're using those, dumping those into our data rewards pool, which then is going out to our data providers. So we're kind of self-funding our network as we build it right now, which, is sustainable to a point.
Sure.
That's one thing that we're working on with our next piece of hardware is if all of a sudden we sell 10,000 seed dev kits, our financial token model right now as it is going to bust.
Yeah.
So we need to really figure out. We have the plans with our eBlock token down the line, which you and I have discussed a little bit, but we are also a U.S. entity, so we need to be careful there
Yeah.
and definitely make sure that we're doing our homework and not getting ourselves in trouble in any way there too. So
Yeah.
right
Definitely
now, right now
potential.
we're able to piggyback off the IoTeX token, which is nice, um, and it works for now. But as we move forward, we're going to kind of figure out the tokenomics as well.
Cool. Super cool. And Max and I are hoping that at some point we get to help you out with that. That'll be a
For
fun
sure.
thing.
Yes, sir.
All right. So walk me through kind of what's new, and then if we, yeah, I may have some more questions after that. Like, what's coming up in the next month or two? You just mentioned you're coming up on milestone two. What else is
Yep.
going on?
So coming up on milestone two, that's gonna be huge for us. That's everyone feeding us data is not able to see the data unless I physically send them a screenshot of their curves or something like that. So
Okay.
part of milestone two is being able to log into like the first iteration of your data dashboard. So this first iteration is gonna be underwhelming, but it's gonna be that that plus 1,000 Twitter followers. So if you're not following us, make sure you go follow us. But
Okay.
those two combined make us reach milestone 2 and that graphs there. So after that, we're still getting our hands on these first set of dev kits. So we're really interested in getting those deployed here locally.
Yep.
We're thinking about, I went to school here locally as well too. So there's a large school system here, lot of local connections that I just want to get kind of proof of concept devices
Yeah.
in and studying
Yep.
buildings.
Yep.
Don't need to reward them. I can just kind of go give them reports and analysis, just kind of a proof of concept that we can then build off of as a use case from there.
Cool.
In a
Let's
commercial way.
let's talk a little bit about value then. So say right now someone buys this thing, it's $215. They put it in their house. What is like a reasonable expectation that they could save if they're, this house I'm in is a 1923 Spanish style San Diego kind of classic house, no heating, no cooling, like nothing like that. What kind of saving stuff am I seeing just from a value perspective as I learn more about the house?
Yeah. So right now we're working on that analytics to be able to show you com- compared to. It's very easy for like different ventilation systems and
Yep.
different roof types, like a tile roof type.
Okay.
Spanish tile runs much cooler than like an asphalt shingle, and so
Okay.
that's something that we're noticing very very early on as well with our data.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so there's stuff like that efficiency wise that we're just coming onto even in our small scale. More data we'll be able to prove and put numbers next to that.
Yep.
Nick, if you put this type of vent in your house, you'd be able to lower your attic by 10 degrees, and over the course of the year, you'd be able to save this much in cooling costs. That's kind
Right.
of where we want to go with it. Obviously,
Okay.
not there yet, but we're working on what we can kind of prove right now.
Okay.
Right now, if you're providing our data, providing your data to us with your Pebble, you're earning 10 IoTeX tokens per day. So that's
Okay.
kind of your incentive to get on board with us and kind of get an ROI with your device. So,
All right. Nice. Yeah. So it's something. It's
mhm.
and it's a way to get people into like, hey, they can, and especially with this dashboard coming out, they can start to see the data coming off that, and then maybe they make their own decisions and say like, oh, we can make some like the big gross movements initially, and then kind of fine tune it as you guys help them with the models that you guys are building.
Yeah, I mean, we have this. I've been coining it you've heard the soul bound tokens. These are
Hmm.
property bound tokens, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to have like a kind of a burnable NFT or PBT, if you will, that you can present to your utility company, maybe get a discount on your energy bill,
Oh, really?
that
Okay.
kind of thing. If you can prove habitual changes month over month or year over year, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So all around this kind of proof of efficiency and how can we build off of that. So
Interesting. Oh, super cool, man. What
yeah,
else is
yeah,
going on? Is that kind of that's the big news is like getting through to milestone 2, and which is
yeah.
you need 1,000 Twitter followers, and then you need to have this dashboard. That's the two
The
tickets to
yeah the
hit.
dashboard, just be able to log in, and it's probably going to be internally for now, just to present to IoTeX, and
Yep.
then we'll be rolling it out to the network here in the coming month or two, just as we flush out kinks and as we figure that out. But yeah, that's the immediate thing. Getting that next piece of hardware is very very big for us and
It's a
very
big
close
deal.
focus.
Yeah.
And then just getting the word out and as much as we can. We're very much organic in bootstrap mode now, so
Yeah.
we have a very cool community that we've been focused on building, and they're very supportive, and that's been very cool. And the IoTeX team has been incredible. They're
Yeah.
very interested in us succeeding and proving their concept as well. So
Yeah.
that's been very apparent the whole time, which is cool. So
Yeah. Yeah. They got some sharp cats on their team. It's always good to be
yep,
around them. You're just like, man, about 70% of what you're saying, I don't understand, but I'm pretty confident you understand it. So
right, yep. No,
that's
those
good to have
guys are
them around.
brilliant. It's very cool. Just listening, absorbing. I try to learn as much as I can, but it's they blow me away. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. 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 Sharp cats. All right, dude. Well, when you hit, we'll see how many Twitter followers we can get you. I think I'm already following you, so I can't do anything there. But
Appreciate it.
we'll push it out, and then would love to connect back in when you guys hit the next milestone or have your next big piece of news. But it's super cool to share out what you're doing and let people know what's going on in the DePIN world.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to talking next time.
Cool. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, Nick.
Ciao, ciao.
Chat soon.